All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's event. I'm Jason Comfort from msdynamicsworld.com, and it's great to welcome everyone for the session around the BI 360 Business Intelligence Suite. Our speaker today is Nils Rasmussen. It's great to have him back today. And as we get going, I just want to remind everyone that we do welcome your questions and input during today's event. You can enter questions at any point, and I know Nils will be leaving time for those to answer them at the end. So just use the Q&A block you should see to the right of the main presentation area, and I know he'll get to some of those at the end. So without any further delay, I'm going to hand things over to Nils to get us started. Nils, welcome.
All right. Thank you, Jason, and thanks to Dynamics Communities for organizing these webinars. So today I'm going to talk about options for replacing Management Reporter and even FRX if you are still running FRX. But a big goal of the presentation is also to show you how you can do so much more with a modern reporting tool or business intelligence suite than just doing general ledger reporting like you're used to with Management Report and FRX. So let's get started. I'll give you just a quick glance at our company, and then we'll talk about BI 360 at the high level and how that can be replacing Management Reporter and FRX. And then we will go into the actual demonstration, and we'll spend most of our time within the product so you can actually see how it all works. And then we'll wrap up and take questions in the end. So Solver works at the global level. We are headquartered in Los Angeles, California. And predominantly we work in the Microsoft space, although we have an increasing number of customers that are running other ERP systems than the Dynamics AX, SLGP, NAV products, including customers that have moved to the cloud with their ERP system and that are using BI 360 in the cloud. So let's talk about what BI 360 does and how that relates to how you do things today in FRX or Management Reporter. So it's been pretty clear to most folks that do what we do at Solver, namely producing, reporting and budgeting tools, that finance and accounting people, even other business people in an organization, really tend to resort to Microsoft Excel as their ultimate familiar, comfortable place, and not only to put together data for reports, but also to a large extent to be a place where they do forecasts and budgets. And that's no different with Microsoft Dynamics customers. They tend to export a lot of things to Excel, including from FRX and Management Reporter, for formatting, for combining it with non-general ledger data, maybe for some consolidation of multiple companies, and like I said, for budgeting and forecasting. So Excel is king. There's no doubt about it for these types of tasks. So in BI 360, we've completely leveraged Excel as the entire user interface to design reports. Of course, you can also run them after you design them and do that in Excel. However, these days, with the popularity of web browsers and certainly also with cloud, if you're looking at that, being able to distribute reports not just by email, but in a friendly portal, it's a more and more popular option. In BI 360, as you will see today, we have a web portal where you can run as a user all of these reports that your power users have designed within Microsoft Excel with our add-in. So we usually call that the best of both worlds, design in Excel, but access through the web. Also, one of the things I will mention a few times today is the fact that most organizations have just too many tools for budgeting, reporting, and analysis. So being able to consolidate those tools into a single solution, or maybe at the most a couple of solutions, that's a really big deal. And it's certainly something we've always strived to do in BI360. And finally, not needing to have help from very technical people, even when you design more difficult reports. That's also a big deal, so that as a customer, you're able to create things on your own and not wait for help from the outside in order to build your reports. So overall, of course, it's not just technology that we want to talk about, but the end result. So big problem today because people have too many report writers across not just their Dynamics ERP system, across GL and subledger data, but also other important data sources you have. Just too many tools. So you have a lack of insight because only now and then do you have time to compile all of this into, a single type of presentation for your decision makers. Too many manual processes often leads to errors in data, so that's something to make a note of. And of course, with data sitting in different systems, both in Dynamics and outside, then integrating it becomes a problem too, unless you have a tool for that. So overall, with BI360, we want to take you as finance, accounting, business type users from what you see on the left, where there's a lot of time being spent on administrative tasks, including manual, repetitive tasks that we just talked about, to what you see on the right, where you have a lot more time for analysis and execution. And that is obviously the dream for any organization. It's to minimize manual tasks and maximize, making really good decisions and analyzing data. Okay. So my last slide here before we go into BI360 to take a look at the product. So if you think about FRX and Management Reporter, they would fit in our picture up here on in the top left corner where it says reporting. Now, there's some really good elements of FRX and Management Reporter. They have the concept of row and column tables, which you don't really have in most Excel tools or add-ins, namely that you don't have to repeat account numbers and other dimensions from your database in every cell in Excel. Basically in FRX and Management Reporter, you can put those in rows and columns. And you will see today when we go in and actually show you how we design reports in Excel, that we've actually achieved the exact same thing, that we can control rows and columns in Excel, therefore making it much more dynamic and much easier to build and manage reports. Another thing we can do is to create multiple tabs in Excel, just like you're used to the reporting trees in FRX and Management Reporter, so that you don't have to manually generate, let's say, the same P&L 10 times across a workbook, but you can do that with our trees and our ranges. We have these ways to dynamically replicate reports, just like you used to from your reporting trees. So anyway, in the top left corner, you can see a report writer, and that's Excel. That's like modern Excel add-in. Two important things. A lot of people typically ask this, so pay attention to this. If you see the dotted line from the reporting, it actually doesn't go into this box, this sample, CRM data source. It goes behind it, by the way. So the whole point here is to symbolize that you can do live reporting. So that's where that dotted line goes, straight from the report writer and into your Microsoft Dynamics database. I kind of stay generic today because I know we have people on running AX and GP and SL, but when I refer to Dynamics, we support all of those systems. Actually, we also support NAV and several other systems, and also Microsoft Dynamics 365 for finance and operations, in case you're planning to go into the Microsoft Dynamics Cloud solutions. We support those too. So the dotted line gives you live reporting for your Microsoft Dynamics ERP system, so that as an accountant, you have real-time reporting. You post a journal entry, you see it immediately in the report writer. On the other hand, as a more classic or functional business intelligence structure, we also have our own database. We are very much a Microsoft shop, so that's a SQL Server database. We call it the data warehouse. It's very modern, very easy, and no technical skills needed to set that up. You can set it up in a day or less, and essentially it will reflect not only data you want to bring in from Dynamics, but also other data sources, whatever they are. These are just samples here with CRM, and then it says other. So important data that you wished you had in your reports where you have your financial data, bring those into the warehouse, and now in your reports or your dashboards or your budget process, you got all of that available from one database. That's a big, big deal to most customers once they have fixed their financial reporting. So with the data warehouse, when would you use it versus just the live reporting on Dynamics? Multiple data sources, one thing. Advanced consolidations, whether it includes currency conversion or eliminations, doesn't matter, but you got a lot of companies to consolidate. The data warehouse is great because it has hierarchies, it can handle minority calculations, and it's a lot faster than running live reports. It doesn't slow down Dynamics when you run reports because it runs off its own database. So that's an option for a lot of organizations. Beyond the reporting, our budgeting module, which is not really the topic today, is optional. It's a very powerful budgeting module. It's part of our suite, so it's easy to bolt it on at any point, and you can handle your entire budgeting and forecasting process. Same thing, you build your budget templates with our report writer, meaning with the Excel add-in. So you can build very easily customized input forms to replace whatever you're doing today. Most of you are using manual Excel spreadsheets today, so it's really easy to visualize how that fits within BI360 because we also design the templates in Excel. And then we have our dashboards. Now, as a Microsoft customer, you may be looking at Power BI, and that's totally okay. Our data warehouse fully supports Power BI as a tool that's pulling data out of there. So that's okay. If you have no particular request for a third-party dashboard, but you would like to see some nice dynamic charts, then our dashboard tool is, of course, totally integrated in our suite, so it's really easy to get started with it. Okay? So overall, what I just talked about, even if you're just starting with FRX or management report or replacement, can then be so much more, handling your budgeting and your dashboards and combining your data sources. It is really up to you if you're looking at the full BI360 suite or only, let's say, reporting. With that said, let us put PowerPoint down here in the background and let us move over to BI360's web portal. Clearly, I think most of you want to see how we build reports, so we're definitely going to do that. But usually I like to start here within the web interface because this is the end result, assuming you have more than just a couple of people and you don't want to only sit in our Excel add-in and build and run reports. If you have ambitions to have a modern way of sharing reports, self-service with any of your end users, then you will really like the portal. The portal also very simply shows you how everything in BI360 can come together in a very nice modern interface. For example, forecasting, that would be our budget module, your annual budget process, also our budgeting module, so all of the input forms for that, and analysis and reporting. So we're going to start and spend most time, of course, on analysis and reporting because that is the topic of today. And I will spend probably 2 minutes on budgeting and forecasting just so you know it's there. And of course, you use the report writer to build those forms. So it is very closely linked to reporting. So let's talk about reporting. Management Reporter and FRX Management Reporter is based on FRX, and FRX has been an extremely popular tool for many, many years, more than 20 years. However, it's old at this point. It was built back in the days where there were very few financial report writers that were user-friendly. So FRX was way ahead of its time. Now it's behind the time. And because management report was very much based on FRX, it's very much, the same way you build reports and so on. It's still behind the times because it's based on a structure that was popular 2 decades ago. You will see today in BI360 that having charts, for example, can be a very powerful way to help analyze your financials. So let's just open the dashboard here first. Today isn't about dashboards, but I'm going to show you one because then you see how nice it is to have a single interface where you can go from a dashboard to a financial statement with one click. So looking at numbers as a tabular report is not always doesn't always give the same ease of analysis as looking at graphics. So here you can see a dashboard example. Now, of course, you can build charts in BI360's Excel add-in, which is our report writer, all day long, but they're still Excel charts. So when you use our dashboard module or another third-party dashboard like Power BI, well, then it gets interactive. So here's an example of a CFO dashboard looking across general ledger and sub-ledger data. So I got 4 business units here, and I can see them automatically ranked, where we can see that corporate Asia is the business unit with the most revenue. So if you drill down on that, you suddenly see these are not static charts. They are dynamic, and the entire dashboard now filtered itself on only the corporate Asia business unit I clicked on. And we can see that it went down to your dynamics, general ledger revenue account numbers, product, services, maintenance, whatever your revenue accounts are. And I can drill up again. I can drill into another business unit, and you get the idea. So in this case, we're analyzing revenues, and we can see it for actual data down to the account level. Let's say at this point, as a manager in your organization, you're saying, I would like to compare these accounts, these revenue accounts, against budget and look at variance. Well, that is typically best done in a financial statement. So why don't we move down to the bottom of the screen? And what you see here we call favorite. So this is the notion of just one click from, let's say a dashboard to another dashboard, or dashboard to report, or a P&L to a sub-ledger report. You can see it becomes completely different world than you today going from, let's say, management reporter to a SQL reporting services report to, SmartList or some native Dynamics report out to an Excel file where you have combined some stuff. That is not an enterprise environment. It's not how things should be. Here, everything is sitting together. So I'm in this dashboard. I want to scoot over to a financial statement. You can do that right here. I don't need to log out. I don't need to go into another piece of software. The user security is the same for me as it was in the dashboard. It's basically very simple. And we now see a financial statement. So at this point in the demo, you can specifically think about FRX and Management Reporter, because that is what you can do in there, is looking at data from your general ledger, and that's it. So if you look at this report, immediately you can see some advantages over looking at the exact same report in FRX and MR. For example, I have nice charts. That is not the dashboard, by the way. These are charts embedded in the report, and I have that. I can have really nice formatting. Like you see, I have the major line items for my P&L below, sitting here on the top, like revenues and profit with huge fonts. And last year's actuals in small fonts, to very quickly let my users pay attention to what's important. And of course, I can scroll down. I can use exception highlighting and anything you know from Excel. That's one difference. Second difference is this report is in the browser. I don't need to be on your network. I don't need Citrix or terminal server. I can be anywhere in the world. As a matter of fact, today I'm not in our office in Los Angeles. I'm sitting in a hotel in Ohio doing this presentation. And again, I can do that via the web onto our web portal, showing you what you're seeing here. Now, if you say, well, how do you refresh this or run it for a different month, whatever. So I can minimize the screen, and then you see the parameters here on the top. Based on your user access rights, you will then see companies and or departments and so on that you have access to. And you can change, we could run this for, let's say, our Canadian office. We could change a month to a different month and year. Anything that you make a filter can be changed. And then you say run. Now this report is running via the internet, especially since I'm remote today, and we get a fresh report. So accessibility is a completely different story for your users that are people with a license that you want to be able to run their own reports. Okay? And of course, everyone wants drill down, so there's drill down here. So let's say we came from the dashboard into this P&L, like we said, to do some variance analysis. Well, in the dashboard, we just looked at, we drilled into company and we looked at actual revenues by account, like you see here. Now we can come and look at, let's say, last year's actuals or variances, and we can drill further down. So let's drill down behind that account 4010 on the 598,000. So we right-click. We actually have multiple drill down options, so we could drill to the journal entry level. We can actually also drill into sub-ledger data if you want to do that, or drill into the summary. And then we can see we have 3 underlying transactions. What about if you give this access to your end users? So now they run their own reports. They don't need to come to you. You don't need to email reports. What if they said, well, I want to get this in my own hands. I don't want to sit just in the browser. How can you do that? In other words, they want to download the report themselves. Well, they can come up here, hit the download button, or if you want to get a little more fancy, hit the share button. You can even scan this code here, and it will show up on your cell phone. And by the way, we do have cell phone apps for both iPhones and, well, Apple devices and Android devices. But here you can scan this, and the execute report pops up on your phone. Not probably so frequently used. You can email it to someone without the user license. It just becomes an Excel file out of the web here, and you can download. So if I download it, and I put this on my desktop, let's say we call this P&L report, like that. Say save. So now that came down from the internet, from the web, and there it is on my desktop. You see that right there. I open that up. Comes right here. Now, this is not our Excel add-in. You're going to see that one afterwards. This is actually just a user downloading a report that they ran themselves in the browser. So it's total self-service. Not how you build the report. We're going to show you that too. Typically what people want to know next is, well, if you downloaded the report to do some analysis, like I'm doing here, will things update? Or is it going to be the same issue as you have in FRX and Management Reporter, that there's no Excel formulas there when you export to Excel? As you probably noticed, here, all of the Excel formulas are there. Say everything updates. Matter of fact, if I click on any of these calculated cells, you can see on the top, it remembers all the formulas. It's a little bit magic because, as you saw, I never ran this report in Excel. I ran it in the web, completely without Excel. But when it was exported back to Excel, it actually remembered all of the formatting, all of the formulas. It even remembered things like fit to page, because I put that formatting in there when I built the report, and it remembers it for my end users that may export to Excel. Okay, so let's leave that again, and let's come right back into our portal. So let's go return to our story now that you saw some of those extra features. So we came from a dashboard doing some high-level variance or graphical analysis from in our CFO dashboard, and then we needed to look at some variance analysis and go deeper. So we came over here to the P&L you see on the screen, and we exported to Excel, did some ad hoc analysis, we drilled down to see underlying transactions. But what if you go further? You want to now look at the sales, product sales by customer, by salesperson, you want to look at it at the level where you're recording your sales transactions. Either you're recording your sales transactions inside of Dynamics in your sales order module, or you may use a third-party system, like a point-of-sale system or something. Which, in case, remember what I said, you can bring that other data into our data warehouse so that we have access to it. And in that case, come down to the bottom to your favorite list of reports and scoot right over to, let's say, a sales report. Of course, all of these reports are just examples. You can build any layout you want with a report writer. So again, I want to compare to FRX and Management Reporter. There's no dashboards in there. They lose their formulas when you export to Excel. They're only for general ledger reporting. So you have lots of other report writers for other things. And of course, that means you can't create sub-ledger reports. Here, all of the reports are built in Excel with the same BI360 designer. And I'm running it to the web. And now I've taken you all the way down to a transaction sub-ledger level, actually a detailed sales report. See that? And I can look at my analysis and figure out what's going on with sales without going over to an accountant and saying, can you run a sales report, or going to a different piece of software to run the sales report. Now, it doesn't stop there. Let's come back to our P&L for a second. And let's say you're done looking at revenues, and at this point you're analyzing expenses. Maybe you're a department head and you're responsible to make sure you're not overrunning your budget too much. So you're running a report and you're looking at your actual versus budget down here, looking at your different expenses, and you realize that, well, I better go down and look at which vendors I've made my purchases to, because something is going on. I got some big variances here. Now, without going over to the accounting department, I can scoot down here and find an accounts payable report as an example. Just like you saw a sales report. So here's an accounts payable report. As I said earlier, these are just sample layouts. You can make any layout you want, really. Notice here a feature that you also don't have in FRX and Management Reporter, which is the nice, grouping on rows, and actually we have the same grouping on columns whenever that makes sense. You can expand and collapse, and you can even have groups within groups within groups if you have like multi-level subtotals and so on your rows. So now we can analyze by vendor exactly when we made the purchases. We can, if somebody did put a comment inside of the Dynamics, that's just a field we can pull out and so on. So last thing I will show you is, let's say that we were looking at marketing expenses. I was pointing that out there in the sample P&L. And let's say you're doing a big campaign on Google, for example, and you're wondering how many hits are you getting on your website for all of the money you're spending on Google Ads. Now, that's a really good example of other data sources. If you look down here, it says marketing cost per web visitor. What is that? Well, what that is, I pulled in marketing expenses from the general ledger, just like you saw I had it in P&L. And then I downloaded web statistics from Google Analytics, which is just one popular data source where people are using to track their website. And I can see now per month, for example, here in the summer, you can see that the cost I'm spending on Google Ads are going way up as compared to the number of web visitors I'm getting. So that's a very interesting way where I got one foot in the accounting camp, looking at expenses posted in the GL, and I got one foot in the marketing camp, looking at what type of bang for the buck that I'm getting. And in BI360, thanks to the data warehouse, you can combine those data sources. You can even use multi-tabs. So, the difference to FRX the Management Reporter, if you want to have completely different reports on different tabs within the same report, if you want to call it that, or same workbook, you can do that. So here I actually have statistics by search engine and so on. Just as an example of how you can get your management team into this web portal, and they can take care of everything from dashboards, financial statements, sub-ledger reports, and even operational reports like you see right there. Okay? So hopefully I've given you at least 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 ideas there in terms of usage of BI360. Now I'm going to log into slightly different demo portal just to give you a little bit more ideas of the other modules. I'm going to move pretty fast just because the main focus then today is on reporting. I'm going to show you how you build the report. But before we leave the end user interface, I want to just show you one forecast form and one budget form so you know that it's there and something you can use. And of course, we already looked at dashboards. So that's what we're going to do. So let's come back here. And as you saw earlier in the portal, we can have different folders. And you set up your own folders here. These are just my samples in this demonstration portal. We spent a lot of time looking at analysis reporting. I did forget to talk about consolidations. You can see got a couple of sample folders here of how I've organized, all kinds of consolidation related forms if you have many companies, whether it's with currency, currency reports, intercompany adjustments, audits of intercompany, IFRS to GAAP adjustments, and just consolidating type of reports with eliminations and so on. That's part of BI360's reporting. You're going to get a lot more dynamic consolidations than what you've been able to do in FRX and MR, so you're not losing out there either. Okay, let's talk quickly about forecasting. So let's see, let me just log into the forecasting example here. So if I come into the forecasting folder, because it's not a budgeting demo today, we're just going to skip my first example, which actually was a really cool top-down what-if type automated forecast. And we're going to just show you one example of a classic bottom-up forecast form. So I got my general ledger accounts down the rows. Now remember, I used the report writer to build this form, so it's very easy for me to have a nicely formatted input form. Remember, it is web-based. That means there's no emailing of budget forms or forecast forms. You do it right here in the browser. It's built in Excel with all of the layout power and so on you have. You see, we use the yellow cells there typically to signify data entry. So that's how you would enter a forecast. The actual data, whatever month you're in, is brought in automatically. As a matter of fact, if I come up here and I run this same template with actual data up to October, well then it pulls in the actual data up to October, you will see. And now you have 2 months of input. You see that, how that changed? And that's just part of the dynamic nature of the report writer in BI360. Very useful, and you have, monthly reforecasting. So you don't need to build many forms. You can have one single. The user security controls exactly which department I have access to and so on. That's all I'm going to say about forecasting. We're going to leave that unchanged. I'm going to do the same thing with budgeting. I'm just going to spend 1 minute here, show you one budget form. We can do all kinds of detailed budgeting. But because it's not the topic of today, we're skipping all of it. Just going to show you one quick example. Because so many Dynamics customers, I would say usually 90 to 95% of any audience that I ever survey, budget in manual spreadsheets. Why not combine that in the same tool where you're doing your financial reporting, as I'm showing you right here. So if you look at this, here we use the report writer in BI360 to create a budget form, and we pulled in actual last year and then forecast that you just saw for the rest of the year. So we have a full baseline of history sitting over there. And now I can go ahead and enter my budget. It mimics Excel because we're so closely related to Excel with our design. So it's even on the web, you see here, works with Excel formulas, even though you're on the web and not in Excel. So that was just sort of entry. And the last thing I'll show you is, because you have the actual data sitting out there on the right, why can't I do it automatically? So I can pop up this screen like this, and then we can say, take 10,000, actually let's not even do that, but let's say, take the history that you just saw, and actually I didn't have any history there, so we can say, let's take $10,000 and let's spread that evenly. So all kinds of spreading methods like that. And you can also do line item detail with that plus button, I can have as many lines as I want. And I can come back here, and now it spread the number. So there's multiple methods to do that. And that save button you see up here is what saves into the database. So there's no, again, emailing of data. That's all that we will say regarding budgeting and forecasting. We'll leave that behind here. So in this end user portion of our demo, you've seen dashboards, financial statements, sub-ledger reports, statistical reports, forecasts, and budgets. All part of BI360, all in a single portal, all with the same user security. I wanted to say that very clearly because even though we're doing FRX MR replacement as our topic, this may give you some vision of what a real corporate performance management solution can do beyond just giving a new fancy set of financial statements. With that said, let's move this portal down to the background. And what we're going to do now is go to the report writer where I actually created these reports. And I'm going to very quickly show you how you build a report. So let's come in here, and I can build my report. If you remember from the architecture slide, I can build them live on Dynamics, so GP, SL, NAV, AX. I can also build them on my data warehouse, and we talked about that, where you can bring in other data too. Today, I just picked Dynamics GP as my example. If you're running AX or SL, don't worry. It's exactly the same report writer. It's just what you see on the left might have slightly different names because they reflect the modules in SL and AX. Here you're looking at GP. So same report writer, in this case looking live down at the ERP database as compared to at our data warehouse. Same thing, you make that choice when you build the report. So let's quickly build the report. And I'm sure I want to sit and watch me for too long, so I'm going to make it easy for both you and myself by doing just like a simple trial balance. So let's go and do this. Let's put in account. Oops, let's spell that correctly. Account and description. So you can see this first portion is really just Excel entry. So anything in the tool that is, or in your report rather, that is just layout, text, formulas, charts, logos, things that are just native in Excel. There's nothing I have to teach you because it's also native in Excel even though you're within our Excel add-in. And you can see our Excel add-in sitting right here on top. You see that's where it is. And this is Excel. This is our Excel add-in. So you have your own little menu bar and you see the fields in your Dynamics database or in our data warehouse sitting on the left side of the screen. Okay? So let's now start pulling in some information. So let's pull in the account string. If you have one, if you're running AX or NAV, it might be just your natural account. Matter of fact, if you're running SL or GP, we can even slice open the account string. You can pull in any of the segments you have, department, natural account, and so on. That's done automatically, by the way. And then let's go and get the account description. Actually, that's sitting inside here. Notice all the attributes I can use in my report. So any of these fields can be filters or just displayed on the report. Remember, pulling from the GL now, but I can go right down to purchasing or sales orders, inventory, assets, and so on, and build sub-ledger reports. That's a big difference. Today you have to switch from FRX and MR into SSRS or SmartList or another tool to do sub-ledger report. Here it's the same place. All right, let's pull in the period balance as well. I could also use debits and credits because there are fields that we have access to, but most of the time you're just going to use the period balance, and we drag that in. And then let's come down here at the bottom, and let's pull in some periods. Notice all these period formulas, all pre-built, quarterly, this year, last year, rolling 12. You can even make your own, but pretty much we've pre-built all of the formula people ask for. So you can just drag and drop those right in there to your columns, and then you can keep building upon it, dragging in, last year, year to date, and adding a total, and so on and so on. And then ultimately what you get is then a full financial statement. And once you have that, you just hit our publish button, and that report then goes right up into the web portal. And if you remember, you come back here. Once you format that report nicely, that might look like this that we just saw, right? Our financial statement for P&L. It might look like this. You see right here, like a balance sheet. It might look like this. Cash flow statement. Well, I'm actually running that cash flow statement for September 2015, you can see. So it can look like this. It's all up to you, or it might be a sub-ledger report. So as a power user, you design right there in Excel, and then you publish up to the web. Now, like I said in the very beginning, if you're a really small organization and you want to make a minimal investment in BI360, you are just a couple of users, you just prefer to sit and build and run in Excel, that's totally fine. As a matter of fact, we have a special pricing offer all of this year to replace management reporters. It's only a few $1,000s if all you want is, just the Excel add-in for running and designing. But as soon as you're more of a mid-sized business and you got a whole bunch of end users and so on, as you hopefully saw here in the beginning, nothing is as slick as publishing it up to the portal and letting everyone do their own thing there. Okay, there's a couple other things I want to mention to you. I'm going to come right here to my desktop, and oops, wrong desktop. Let me go into my demo here. I can come right here and I can say, what about report scheduling and distribution? So we have something called the publisher. As a matter of fact, I can't go into it now because I've been there for a while and updated it. But in the publisher, you have essentially what you see in the PowerPoint. You have automatic scheduling and distribution of reports. So what that is different than the web portal where it's self-service. We call it push reporting versus pull reporting. Push means, I don't think my users are probably going to run their own reports, so I rather just have it emailed to them. But I don't want to email it manually. I want to have it automatic. For example, internally at Solver, we use actually both. We have self-service in the web, but we also have a bunch of reports going to the sales team and consulting team and so on every week, and it's automatic with the report publisher. So you have the same type of function. I think it's called the report server, if I'm not wrong, for FRX and management reporter, that you can schedule and distribute reports. So it's very modern way of doing that there in BI360. It doesn't even have to go out in the Excel format. That publisher can convert those reports to HTML, PDF, and so on. So automated pushing out of reports, automated self-service on the web. You will have both. So just to summarize up here, design in Excel. We typically like to do one-on-one demonstrations to cover, exactly your needs and all of your questions and so on. So as you have seen this presentation, keep that in mind that we're more than happy to give you a presentation to show you. And we work with a lot of Microsoft Dynamics partners, so it's a good chance that your partner is already also working with BI360. If not, you can just contact us directly. So design in Excel. Deploy in the web, we talked about that. I briefly mentioned if you actually want to run your reports on the phone. Of course, sometimes the screen on the phone isn't that great for looking at a big report at least, but for small, simple reports, certainly with our apps for Android and iOS, you can use those. Because both your reporting and budgeting it's in a secure environment running right off of SQL Server, whether it's direct on Dynamics or a data warehouse. That means you totally minimize number of errors and so on. One thing I didn't mention is that we have dynamic account ranges and such in the financial statements. So it's a much less chance than FRX and MR of missing a new account. They will actually insert themselves if they're in the ranges in the report. So less chances for errors, certainly. Because you can combine any of your data sources, not just your dynamics data, a lot better ways here, as you saw, to give your users better insight to data and therefore better decision making. So I'm going to summarize up on this one screen. You can see a lot more information on solverglobal.com. That is our website. If you have some immediate need for a presentation for your team and those type of things or questions, just email info@solverglobal.com and then we can get right back to you. And certainly we can give software estimates. If your Dynamics partner don't work with BI360, we can also give you direct implementation estimates and so on. Otherwise, you can get that from your partner and anything else that you need. We have a beautiful location for our annual user conference. It's in the Torrey Pines Resort in San Diego in August. So if you have a chance to become a customer before then, you're absolutely welcome there as well. We have lots of training videos. It's called BI360 University. So although it's nice to be trained in a classroom or on-premise, with your own data, certainly for new employees and so on, they can always go into our customer portal and train themselves on using our videos for sure. Last thing before we open up here with Jason for questions, I want to mention that many of you are thinking about the cloud these days. So if you are running Dynamics on-premise or in some private hosting farm today, BI360 can of course be installed directly there with Dynamics. If you are planning to move to the cloud and go to, let's say, Dynamics 365 for operations or Dynamics 365 finance or even another cloud ERP system, chances are that BI360 is already connected to it and you can use the BI360 cloud to work with those systems. You can even use the BI360 cloud to connect to your on-premise systems. We'll actually have a lot more information about that in other webinars. And I'm saying that just in case you're not interested in using the BI360 on-premise version. Either way, what you saw today applies. So with that said, Jason, should we open up for questions?
Yeah, absolutely, Nils. And so to everyone in the audience, if you haven't entered a question yet, please do it now. We have several that have come in already, and I'm also just going to put up a very brief poll question. It is, I'll launch that now, and it's optional. It's really just a way to indicate if you do want to indicate follow-up interests. Feel free to do that, but otherwise, Nils, you may want to just close that on your own window there. But otherwise, we'll start in on the questions that have come in. So this one I think you may have covered to some degree, but someone asked whether the data warehouse is SQL-based or is it proprietary format.
It is Microsoft SQL Server in the very user-friendly star schema. So we call it OLAP free because some people think you have to use OLAP cubes to do proper BI. We did some really smart engineering to make it just a relational SQL database. And you never saw it today because there's no time, but it's got a very friendly interface. So you're actually not writing SQL queries or anything. It's user interface. It's kind of like setting up your chart of accounts in Dynamics to configure the data warehouse. Okay.
All right. Someone asks, what are the main differences? Oh, I'm sorry, we've kind of covered that one. But are formula fields locked in the exported Excel files?
They can be locked. So it depends if you want them locked or not. So if you want people to be able to change formulas, remember they're exported, so it doesn't really matter. But maybe you want to make sure they don't change the formulas and then forget that they did. So you can just, when you build the report, again in Excel, like I was showing you, you can just use Excel cell protection on those cells that have formulas, and then they can't change them. Obviously, when you're a user running it through the web, you can't change them anyway, but that locking also works when you exported it out to a static Excel file. So that's how you do that.
All right, someone wants to know if what they saw today is bidirectional. Specifically, can they create journal entries to upload to AX using BI360?
That is a great question. So I didn't mention that at all. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind with bidirectional is, can you, after you finish a budget in BI360, can you send the budget back to Dynamics? And we can do that. In terms of sending back journal entries, whether it's AX or GP or SL, we can do that as well. You know, some people will scratch their head and say, well, why would you do journal entries in a reporting consolidation tool? Well, it could be that they are, you know, you're a consolidation type company and you're posting consolidation adjustments or IFRS to GAAP adjustments. There might be good reasons why you post it in BI360. Most of you have probably heard about Hyperion. Is sometimes a name I bring up when we talk about consolidations, because it's a household name for large companies for consolidations. We do the same thing as you can do in a tool like that you can post consolidation adjustments, and you can even do allocations in BI360. So there are reasons some customers will create not just budget data, but actual data in BI360 using our forms or allocation capability, and then they may want that back into Dynamics, any of the Dynamics tools. And basically what we do is we use the report writer to generate the exact import format to, I guess the question was for AX, the exact import format, so you can just load that in there and do that on, let's say, a monthly basis. So it all depends on how you want to use BI360 for, you know, actual entries of data other than budgets.
Is BI360 available in Spanish? And if so, can English and Spanish be selected by the user?
Yes, it's available in a number of languages, even Chinese. But it is available in Spanish, and it's something you switch the language up in the toolbar. So one user can see it in English and another one in Spanish.
All right. There's a question about testing. After you build a report, can you test it right there, or do you need to deploy it to the web and test it there?
You can test it right there. I had to cut it a little short because I saw I was running out of time, but absolutely. As a matter of fact, yeah, you will test it there in Excel. You'll run it, look at the data, make sure everything is good, and then you will post that template, not your data, but your template up to the web, and then people can run it from the web. Now, I should mention one more thing. We have a big new release coming here publicly. It's going to be shown on the 1st if you're a partner, actually on the 23rd of May if you're a customer or prospect, the 1st, and then 3 other times in June. And we're adding a feature in this new version. That's what I was going to bring up, where if you actually desire to use the public cloud, so deploy BI360 in the public cloud. Actually, you don't deploy it because it's already deployed. You just have to configure it and load data. Then the question is, with the Excel add-in, how does that work if you're in the public cloud with your database and the portal and everything? And the cool thing in the new version is Excel also works via the internet. So that means same answer to the question. You're building that report, your database and portal is in the cloud, but you're sitting with the Excel add-in on your local desktop, and you want to test it when you run it. You can actually still run that report in Excel, and it goes up to the cloud and gets your data and puts it down to Excel. So pretty cool.
All right, I'm just going through the list of remaining questions here. Can you access GP manufacturing data? Is it native as a module, or does it require additional configuration?
The answer is yes. It's native as a module. So in GP we have, it's actually where we did our very first integration when we started connecting live to ERP systems. So it's a massive integration. It's not even just all the modules in GP, including manufacturing and even rarely used modules like HR in GP, but we also link to several third-party ISVs that put the tables in GP. You can always add your own, so if you're using AX or SL and you've done customization, in our integration tool, which is part of every installation, you can add any SQL table that even have been added by a third party or yourself and see it in the report writer. But manufacturing is natively showing up, and you can write reports.
All right. Can you use SQL scripts or views to pull in the columns or do calculations on the reports?
Great questions. We tend to say we hope you never have to use this, a SQL script because that's the whole idea, is that you don't have to be technical. But if there is a good reason, I'll give you an example. We had a customer I can remember that used Dynamics, but they actually had another system, and they needed one table from that other system on a different database on their network. And they created a SQL view and put it into the Dynamics database. It's what's called a linked server view. And that SQL view looked over at that SQL table in the other database. And because our integration sees everything in the Dynamics database, including SQL views, now that SQL view popped up inside Excel, like I was showing you on the left side, and you can actually report on data in that other database too. So that's almost an extreme view of that. But if you've done some fantastic SQL views, let's say that you want to be able to preserve and use in the report writer, yes, they're viewable right in that menu bar, and they will show up with whatever name you've given the column tables in that SQL view.
All right. Can you restrict users from downloading into Excel? Can you set an expiration date? I guess this is separate, but can you restrict users? Can you set an expiration date on published and on-demand reports?
Can you set an expiration date on public or on-demand reports?
Published.
No. Yeah, you can't really. The reason we haven't added a feature where you say you can't download this report anymore is that when you think about it, if they download it, let's say you had an expiration date in the portal and you said you can't download the report anymore. First of all, you could take a screenshot in the web, right? Now, let's say you said, yeah, but I want them, that's okay, they can see it in the web, but I don't want them to touch the numbers anymore. You can protect the whole file so they can download it to Excel, but they can't do the analysis I showed you. And of course, you might have downloaded the week before you set the expiration date, and they still have the live one. So when you think about it, it's no real reason I can see that feature is needed. There's certainly, if a lot of people ask for it, we would add it. But right now, that's not the feature because we haven't really heard the demand for it.
How do you handle trial balance reports as it relates to new accounts being added to the chart? Does it automatically insert the new accounts to the trial balance in BI 360?
Absolutely. Again, there was no time to show it today. I was just briefly mentioning it, that you have these dynamic ranges. It's one of the really cool differences to FRX and Management Reporter. You don't hard code the rows, you can do ranges. So if it's a range of, let's say, expense account, let's say operating expenses, or some subset of that, and you're adding a new account in Dynamics, and its account number is within the range, it automatically shows up. The row automatically creates itself. So there's less chances for you forgetting brand new accounts. And you don't have to do ranges either. You can do wildcards, all accounts starting with 4, and again, they will insert themselves automatically when they show up.
A couple of GP questions here. Does BI 360 support GP budgeting, and does it work with analytical accounting?
Yes and yes. So when it comes to GP budgeting, I would say we do it even better than that. I didn't even mention it today, but for GP and SL and NAV, we have actually done a simplified version of our full budgeting, where we write straight from the web portal into the budget table. The question was GP, so I'll answer that, where you can write straight to the budget table in GP without using our data warehouse as your budget database. Now, it has all kinds of limitations thanks to GP's database, that you can only store general ledger budget transactions. There is no payroll budget table, and CapEx budget table, and sales budget table, and so on in GP. So you're going to have a very limited budget process with just GL budgeting. But we actually have a version of our budget module that just budgets straight on the GP. We have some customer using it. It's an extremely quick implementation and the lower cost of the whole portal because it is very basic budgeting. But of course, it's super dynamic. Web, save the data, bam, it goes straight into the budget table in GP and shows up in your reports.
Can MR reports be migrated to BI360, or do they have to be manually created?
I wish I didn't get that question. No, it's a very good question. We built a report conversion tool for FRX because we've been replacing FRX for a number of years now. We didn't make the same tool for Management Reporter because our experience wasn't that great. The reason was that because our tool is so much more dynamic, we just talked about one example with dynamic ranges of accounts. If you convert a report from FRX or Management Reporter, or if you could convert the Management Reporter report, what we saw when we did it for FRX is you get the same static reports with static rows and static columns, and you sort of introduce worst practices, not best practices, right off the bat. So let's say you move 50 reports over, you got 50 static reports, where you probably will go back in the report and start changing the formulas to being dynamic. So we didn't make that conversion tool for Management Reporter because we rather people spend the extra hours of making them best in class off the bat. What you can do is you can export your report to Excel from Management Reporter, and then you can just keep the formatting you like and then just redrag in the formula. So that's sort of a hybrid version where you don't really need a tool from us. You just benefit from the common Excel platform.
All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. We do still have a few more questions. Do you have time, Nils, to stay with us and answer a few more? Or okay.
Yep.
Let's see here. So, scrolling through here, is there an ability to include wildcards on account numbers?
Yes. That was a really short answer.
Yeah. Is there a tool to import the budget instead of manually typing in the budget into BI360, or can the tool use the GP budget?
Yes. You can bring in budgets. So if your budget are somewhere else, so you're not looking to use the BI360 budget module, you can absolutely import budgets just like we're importing actuals. I'm now talking using the data warehouse. Of course, if you're doing the live reports, like I was showing you a live report on GP, then you're not importing anything. You're just pulling data from the budget table in GP. So yes and yes.
All right. Does BI360 work with multidimensional analysis, and can you access multidimensional analysis codes out of the box?
Yes, and I forgot the question earlier. There was two questions in one, which was analytical accounting, and MDA, if I remember right, or analytical accounting came from multidimensional analysis, so they're sort of the same family, if you will. So since we've been linking to GP since the first day we had the BI360 7.5 years ago, we've had customers come with those questions, so we made those integrations. So I would give a little best practices advice again. None of those tables, MDA or analytical accounting, are awesome for reporting. That's probably why the question came. So you get a lot, even though we linked to it, you can report on it. If you have a lot of important information in there, it's vastly more flexible to pump that same AA or MDA data over to our data warehouse, because then we slice the sort of fake dimensions in MDA and ADA into real dimensions, and you can slice and dice and put things in rows and columns in a much more flexible way. So those are a little bit advice.
Okay, well, I think we're just about through the questions here. A couple of people are requesting different kind of demos items, like looking at drilling down from a report like a P&L down to a subledger detail. And looks like that's about it, though. Which maybe would be best as a follow-up.
You can just do that in the follow-up. We have some really good examples going from sales into inventory and those type of things.
Okay, and also someone's interested in the cost of attending the Focus event in August.
It should be on our website that you see up there, solverglobal.com. So there should be, if you scroll around a little bit, the Focus link there, and then you'll see that. Actually, I should mention, if you are a customer or planning to be a customer, we also do 2 days of training right before focus, so you can tell your boss there's a really good reason to go there to get the training too.
Great. Well, I think we will end it there. I think we're through all those questions. Thank you for taking the time to go through so many of them there. And we'll begin wrapping up. So yeah, Nils,
All right.
thank you very much once again for taking the time today.
Thank you, Jason, and thanks to Dynamics Communities for linking us together with the community out there, and have a great day.
All right, and we did record today's event. We'll be following up on some other questions that people requested responses to. Thanks for taking the poll, and we're going to wrap it up with that. So have a great day, everybody.